Hey everybody, so we're going to do a quick video. I am going to be doing a whole series on idea all the way through to publication, but I'm waiting to do that series until we have some new features rolling out that's going to make that entire process a lot faster and a lot more seamless. And so I don't want to get into the weeds about the long way of doing things when we have something that's going to make that entire process like really smooth and easy. So I'm not going to do a lot of videos about the longhand way of doing this, but this is going to be one where we're going to go in. This is actually a fresh install of Paging Poly, and we're going to create a project. We're going to add a system prompt that I have available for you guys in the Discord. And then we're going to grab a dossier that I have already done work around. It's actually from one of my samples when I was testing NAN workflows. And so we're going to use that. We're going to take that chapter outline to a scene by scene outline. And then we're going to create a style guide. And then we're going to do a test chapter, basically, so that you guys can see really what this would look like in real time. So with a lot of these, we're one dossier format instead of the blueprint with the separate files. I found the separate files just makes it a lot easier to turn things on and off as we go, but you'll see that here in a second. Okay, so we're just going to create a project. I'm just going to call this test project. We're going to select an author. This is going to be a novella. We're going to do 15,000. That's 150,000. I can count. Okay. And this is paranormal, para-rom-com. Okay, we are going to do 5 just so that we have a baseline. I'm going to skip this. Now we have the AI system prompt. By the way, you can drag this further down. Be careful, it can sometimes look like it's selecting outside and then this window can close. So don't yank it too far, but you can get yourself a little bit more room. So off to the side here, I have a system prompt for, this is just for romantic comedy. I actually have a separate one for paranormal romantic comedy, but for our purposes, this is fine. And so I'm going to paste this in here. This is for romantic comedy, romance with humor as a primary tone. So you can remove this. This is just a label so that you know what that system prompt is. You are a specialized creative writing assistant for romantic comedy stories where humor is equally important to romance, where character voices drive comedy, and where falling in love happens amid genuine hilarity. You have genre knowledge, comedy through character voice, situation, and dialogue, meet cute scenarios and awkward romantic situations, yada. So there is genre knowledge, there's universal fantasies to work in, a writing approach, a general tone and style that you can obviously tweak all of this, character development, romantic comedy structure, some ethical guidelines, which you could remove if you wanted to. I actually like this. I don't think that the AI generally does these things, but like this could actually be nice to like have in here, like diverse characters included as full characters, not set up. I do think that like diverse characters can feel like placeholders sometimes. Avoid humor based on trauma or serious mental health. Obviously, if that was how your character dealt with serious mental health, then you would remove that. But these are always meant to be like complete options for you then to take and tweak. It's not necessarily something that you're supposed to just like run with as is. You definitely can, but I would encourage you to look through these, really read through them, add your own like points, remove points that don't really fit your style, and then go from there. Remember, the best romantic comedies make readers swoon and snort, blending real longing with unwavering warmth and wit. Okay? We're not going to worry about a cover image. I'm just going to create the project. Here we go. We're going to open it up. We are going to have 5 chapters in the manuscript folder. And then I'm going to open what do I want? I'll open a blueprint. And I'm going to copy. Also, I have this off screen just so that we can move quickly through this. I have a full novella that again is supposed to be a paranormal romance about a genie. And honestly, we might use this as one of our like test stories that will actually go out on like our known pen name down the line. I don't know. We'll see. So what this is basically, and this always annoys me, but like you will get extra lines when copying in from Google Doc. It's unavoidable, to be honest. Okay, we're going to go through this document and you're going to see how I would set this up. So I would have a character file for the main 2 characters. So we have Rachel and Rad. We'll definitely change these names, but okay. So we're going to need 2 characters, and then I'm going to do a 3rd character that is going to be for the supporting characters. Okay, so I'm just going to grab, let go. Okay, I'm going to grab this. I'm going to controller command X. I'm going to grab here into characters 1. There's Rachel. I'm going to copy or X her name actually, because that doesn't need to be in 2 places. And I can actually click into here to rename. And you'll see that's already renamed. I'm going to come back into Blueprint. We're going to xrad, pop up. And I know this is a little bit boring, but I just want to show you that this can be really like fast. Obviously too, like these character sheets are really lean. I would generally have a lot more going on for this, but it's fine for a test. But just know if I were doing this for real, I would probably flesh these people out a little bit more. Okay, so we have that. So we have our 3 characters. And if you wanted to, too, you could have a folder and we could rename folder characters if you wanted to, just to make it like if you wanted all characters. And we just drop these guys into here. That way you could toggle on all characters if you wanted to, and then you can still do them individually if you wanted. So we could have characters there. Okay, and then coming into the blueprint. So generally, like this top part, I would leave in the blueprint file. So we have characters taken care of. Okay. So now we have genre expectations. So this is basically your style. So we're going to add style. We're going to copy this. And we had a little bit of this in the system prompt as well for style. Okay, so we've got that X'd out. So we don't need that anymore. And now we have a detailed outline. So I'm going to grab this outline. Okay, and that's just a conclusion. We'll just grab all of that. So we're going to X. I'm going to create an outline file. And I'm going to drop all of this in here. We'll leave the conclusion for right now. And then we have chapters 1 through 8. So this already has like beats. So what I was just going to say before too is basically what I do is I go through the snowflake method, which is like very easy to document. You can even ask AI, what is the snowflake method? But basically you start with an idea. It takes that idea in the AI terms. It takes that idea, turns it into a hook and a premise. From that hook and the premise, you would tweak anything that you don't love. And then you would ask for a long synopsis, which is usually like 3 to 5 paragraphs covering all the major beats of the story. And that would be your long synopsis. And then next you would go into creating your character sheets. You would ask it to create character sheets for all the main characters and the supporting characters. Then you would ask for settings and locations that the story takes place in. And then you would ask for an act by act breakdown. And then you would ask for a chapter by chapter breakdown. And then you would ask for a chapter by chapter with scenes. So I'm going to really quickly grab this outline. So right now we just have chapters. So I'm going to turn on this blueprint. I'm going to turn on style and I'm going to turn on characters. So we have all of our information, our background information, if you will. And in here, I'm going to create a couple new lines. These are actually the real models that I would use. But we have a cheapy guy here. Actually, we're going to go here. So this is your models. So it's going to show you your favorites by default. If you want to see all, you click all, and then you can go ahead and do a search. It's going to have your favorites pinned to the top, but you can do a search. So we're going to look for a free model. So DeepSeek can be really slow. So I think, you know what, we're just going to go with, no, okay. Doesn't want to do that. We're going to go with Maverick. This is one that I use for testing a lot because he's free and because he's pretty fast. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to crank this up to 8,000 because we are doing outlining. And so that can, even for a novella, like I just don't want it to get cut off. And you would definitely want to maybe even do 16 if you were using a thinking model. We're going to leave it at 0.7. So we're going to save settings. Okay. We're going to come here. And I believe I have, okay. So using our chapter by chapter outline, break down each chapter into individual scenes. And for each scene, include, so this is like a hardcore one. You don't necessarily need to go this hardcore. And this could actually be in our prompt library, but for sake of brevity, we're just going to pop it in here. This is basically saying using our chapter by chapter outline, break down each chapter into individual scenes. Each scene should have scene number and setting, POV character, scene goal, what the POV wants. Okay, POV character wants, conflict and tension, beats within the scene, character wound. And actually, wait, before we do this, we're actually going to come back into style and we're going to flesh this into a full style guide. And this could be easy. I'm going to have like full step-by-step prompts for this as we go on, but I'm just going to show you that you don't necessarily need my prompts in order to do this. So I'm just going to say, can you please use the context to build out a full style and tone guide that will help my writing voice stay consistent and fit the genre. Okay. And I have a system prompt, so it knows my genre from the system prompt. It also has some writing style in the system prompt, and then it has words before. So I'm going to open my prompts. I'm going to go to general, and I'm going to go, which is active docs and words before. So all of the documents that I have toggled on, which I'm going to toggle on the outline too, all of these documents that are toggled on are the active documents, and then words before is words before in this document. So I actually don't need the style as like an active document because then it will send twice. So here we go, and I'm just going to hit go. Oh, and I am on the classic mode. I'm like, why didn't that go? I'm on the classic mode. So classic mode has 2 steps. Quick mode has just 1. So I'm going to make sure my cursor is at the end, and then I'm going to go. There we go. Okay, and it's writing out a nice little style guide. Character voice, comedic elements, pacing structure. See, comedic elements. It knows we're doing a rom-com because of that system prompt. Approve. Okay, so obviously I would read through this really carefully, but I'm just going to remove this bottom part because that's part of a prompt. And I'm going to come up here. And this is a comprehensive style guide for romantic comedies with elements of fantasy. I don't know where the oh, yeah, because this is romantic comedy with elements of fantasy. It says right there, it's a paranormal. I had forgotten that for a second. I'm like, wait, what? Okay, so we can remove all of this because now we have tone. We have a writing style. It's going to be first person POV with Rachel's voice. So we're not doing dual. Infused humor, physical comedy for Rad's cluelessness, language and syntax, character voice, comedic elements, romantic and emotional elements, pacing and structure, and key principles. So I would read through all of this and I would make tweaks and changes, but we're not going to do that right now, again, because I'm just showing you the premise. I'm not showing you a real-time example. So now we have this. I can turn off outline because we're going to come back to outline. And again, we have all of this, but we could very easily just do the same thing we did in style and be like, hey, I have a chapter by chapter outline above, and we can even say above, or you could put this into the prompts as well. But like I said, we're just going to roll inside, break down each chapter into individual scenes for each scene include, but we could just like say, break it down into individual scenes. Like that would be fine too. But we're going to stick with the longer guy. Each scene should have a mini arc, enter with one emotional state, leave with another. Scenes should build on each other, create momentum, make sure wound and growth are present in behavior, not just stated. That's really important. With AI, it loves, and this is one of the reasons I like having the character files separate, is you can also do, these are really tiny, but usually you would have a very full character sheet that might be, I don't know, like 2,000 words long. And what I would generally do is I would have the long version and then I would have a quickie version that's basically just the, if I were doing dual, it would be each character voice. It would have like maybe a line of dialogue example from that character so that you keep voices separate. And it would have like their general appearance. And that would be the main and like their main personality. But it wouldn't have things like their internal wounds. It wouldn't have like their full character arc necessarily. It would just be like quick this, but like this goes into some of what they're going through in the story. So the quick one would be much more superficial stuff, because if you have something like that she's trying to learn vulnerability, like that could end up getting woven into every single chapter you do. That's a really big issue with drafting with AI, is it will try to insert those things everywhere. And I do read a lot of rom-coms, and sometimes that is a style of the rom-com, especially if there aren't additional pieces like a paranormal romance going on where there's like fantasy elements, or if there's a mystery going on, that kind of stuff. It can be very focused on the wound, but it can be very repetitive the way AI does it. And I'm working on something that's going to help prevent that from happening, but just so that if I had a full character sheet, I wouldn't necessarily send that full character sheet with every single chapter. I would have a shortened version that I would use for that. And then above or below the chapter outline, I would put notes of, hey, and we want to see XYZ behavior so that we can start seeing that maybe she has some issues going on or whatever. I'd have like character notes that I would add myself. Okay. So we've got this, we've got our prompt, and what we're going to do is we're just going to go active documents and words before. We're going to hit it, and it's going to give us chapters with scenes. And this is a lot for each scene. Usually I do like a paragraph each. So we'll actually see, this is a little bit of a different setup. I might even say and have it be in like a paragraph so that it's not all like that. Okay, so it just did chapter 1. So we're going to just approve. So obviously we would want it to continue. So what we would do here at the very end, we'd go, that's great. After reading through and making edits, obviously. That's great. Please give me the chapter or the scene by scene for chapter 2 now, please. And then we would go and hopefully it would, yep, there we go. Chapter 2. So depending on the model, like again, we're using a free model, we're using Llama Maverick, and Maverick isn't the sharpest boy in the box. It's fine. He's great for testing and that kind of stuff. He's getting a little frozen. Oh, there we go. Good boy. Okay. He's not always the sharpest, so he's not necessarily somebody that can crank out the entire list all at one go. So you would have to go chapter by chapter if you were using something more free. But generally speaking, Claude would usually do all of this. Same with GPT-5, even like Grok or AI would usually do the whole thing in my experience. But he didn't, and that's okay. That's okay, buddy. Okay, so we are going to grab this. This is chapter 1, and I'm going to drag this down. We've got 3 scenes in chapter 1 with all of this. We don't need this bottom part because that is separate. This is part of the prompt, basically. It's not part of the actual outline. Okay, so now we're going to come into chapter 1. I'm going to paste this in, and we have 1,000 words. That's a lot. I don't know how well it's going to do with this, especially since it's a free model. Even with Claude, this could sometimes be a little bit too much information. So I might even go a little bit deeper and just be like, for each scene, could you give me just a paragraph like rundown, right? And you could go scene by scene, especially if you were using a smaller model or like a local model, you could go by scene, which all I would do is I would come after scene 1. I would come here and I would use my drafting prompt here. And then I would do the same thing below. But we want all of this to be used. So I have a writing romance and I have a writing romance draft. I'm going to switch back to classic just so that you can see. And we do have a horny one for doing spicy, but we're going to do the regular draft. It has active docs and words before, using the provided story context and previous chapters, if not first chapter, active docs, scene breakdown for the chapter, words before. Expand this into a full draft designed to compel the target reader while maintaining narrative, blah, blah, blah. So should delight and rivet romance readers with delicious banter and swoon-worthy moments. You also see in the classic that this shows the estimated tokens that will be sent versus how many tokens that model can handle. Llama can only handle 128,000 tokens. So we can see that we're at 3% right here. It will also show you the active documents actually resolved with what that is. For this has a lot of information, right? So we don't actually need the blueprint on. We actually don't need the characters on. We just want style. So we just want style and we want the system prompt, which is default on. So you'll notice that this didn't change. That's because this already pulled what the active docs and words before are. So if I change this in the classic view, I'm going to go back to prompts and then I'm going to select this again. And you'll see now this is updated where it has over 1,000 like less. So it's 2.2% instead of 3. It will show that the active documents and the words before have changed. And I want to make sure that, yep, so that's the cursor is in the right spot. And so we're just going to go ahead and execute this, which would be our first writing prompt. And we're going to generate. And this is immediately drafting that scene. Now, something that you might come across, and we'll see if this does it. We're just going to let him go. Sometimes when you have scene by scene, oh yeah, this is super short. This is very short, which is a very common thing with the free models, but especially with the local models like Llama, is what we have is a very short chapter. So if we actually select this, it will give us a word count below. It did less than 800 words, which is ridiculous. So if you are using a free or a smaller model, what you would definitely want to do is do scene by scene. It has a tendency to then label those scenes. So you would just replace the label usually with a scene break. And you can get that scene break right here in the editor panel. But that gives you an idea of what the workflow would be like. I would do the outline. I would do all of the chapters with scene by scene. Like I said, too, this can be a little bit too much information for some of the models where it will start having problems with good quality prose coming out. So what you could do is just have it say, in fact, actually, let's just do that really quick. So I'm going to delete all of what we have. And I'm going to delete the majority of this prompt too. Actually, I have immediate regrets because I want some of the bottom part of that prompt. Okay, so I'm going to grab this. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to keep this part. We're going to leave the tropes part, maybe. We're going to grab, okay. And actually, we're going to keep beats and scene. Actually, we're not going to keep this. Okay. And conflict tension, scene goal. These aren't bad. POV character, if applicable. We're not doing that here. Scene number. So we're just going to delete the numbers so that it doesn't get confused. Like, where's 5? Okay. So we're going to keep this. Each scene. Okay. And each chapter should have a short summary followed by a 1 paragraph. Oh my God, my fingers are not working. 1 paragraph summary of each scene with important beats from B above. Okay, so we're gonna do that. And again, like the result of this, we are using a free model. Just keep that in mind. This would be stronger depending on the model. All right, so we're gonna pay a little bit and use Nemotron, which is not a free model, but he is very cost effective. In per million is 60 cents, out is also 60 cents. So we're gonna use him and just see if we don't get a little bit better. So we're gonna come back to general, we're gonna go. Oh, and I would have turned this stuff back on. But that's not necessarily necessary. Okay, this is a lot more on par with what I would usually have. Is this kind of short and quick. And see, now he's doing more than just the 1 chapter. And we're gonna let him go. Okay, and I'm just gonna stop him there because we've gotten what we need for this, and I'm not gonna have you sit here while we do the rest. So then again, we would grab chapter 1, we would grab all the scenes from chapter 1. So that one doesn't have any beats. It did not list conflict or tension, which is interesting, I just noticed. But that's okay, we can just remove that. So then we would go to chapter 1. I'm going to just swap this out. We would just remove the parts that he didn't fill out for whatever reason. Again, like the cheaper models, you're going to get some interesting stuff going on. And then I would probably do it this way. So again, we have the go back to classic writing romance, I believe had scene breakdown. So this actually shows scene breakdown for the chapter. Oh, and that's probably part of it is it's the chapter breakdown versus scene. So that may have also contributed to the short word count, but we can just do it via the scene. I'm going to add a couple extra lines just so that I can easily see where my prompts are. And then we're going to go back to prompts. We have just style on. Great. Okay. And there I'm at where I want to be. And then I'm going to execute the prompt. Chapter 1, scene 1. So this is what I'm talking about. It'll label these scenes. So I would just remove this label. And then it's going to go through with that scene. And then I would do the same thing below. And I would just say continue so that now it has this ending issue. where it's deciding to give me extra information, approve. I would just remove end of scene. Okay, and then I would just, above here, I would say continue with this scene. I'm going to leave this part too. And then I would come here, add a couple extra lines. I would again come back out because it's already pulled what the active documents and words before, so it's not going to pull what we just did unless we come back out here, click in again, and now it's going to have our entire chapter as well. So it has words before, it has, yeah, 2000, that would be about right. And then come here, okay, and we're going to go ahead and hit execute. We now have scene 2 and it's continuing. So that's a quick way of how I would set up the blueprint and the character files and all of that stuff. Have a style guide for sure. Especially one of the things with a quick note about Claude Sonnet 4.5. A lot of people have been complaining about the fact that Sonnet no longer sounds like them, and it used to. And they were used to able to get a tone of voice with Sonnet that was very similar to how they wrote. And what has been revealed, I'm going to take out the end of scene. What has been revealed is that 3.7 and 3.5 had a preset style and tone guide for fiction writing, and that is no longer the case in 4.5, so you need to have that yourself now instead, which honestly I feel like is probably a good thing, because I think one of the reasons they removed it is because it was hard to override to some degree, and so I think that they removed it so that people had more control over that potentially. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but it is something that changed that a lot of people are having issues with. Having the style and tone guide would really help with that. The other thing that would really help with that, and obviously you want to come in and remove these prompts. Another thing that will really help with that is one of my workflows, which is I do skeleton drafting for, at minimum, the first chapter. I actually like a skeleton draft beyond that, but I would write the skeleton draft and then I would flush it out as much as I could as the human in the situation for chapter 1. And then I would have AI help me polish and edit that chapter 1 so that the dialogue is me, the style and tone of the writing is actually, the majority of it is me. And so that way the model that you choose can continue on in that style. One of the things that most of the models are good at is looking at previous chapters and being like, oh, this is how we write chapters, and mimicking that style and that tone and that voice. So a good way, like if you want to go the extra mile to really make sure it's infused, is going through and doing a skeleton draft, really polishing that first, even second chapter, and then continuing on with your drafting process using AI, where it's going to be a lot better at mimicking. I would still have a style guide even if I were doing that though, because this gives you that consistency throughout that helps you maintain what you're doing and the whole arc of what you're doing. Okay, so hopefully that helps. I am going to say right off the bat that this process is going to be significantly smoother with a lot less copy paste between chapters. And also to copy paste, you can do, I would probably have the outline here and then I'd be copying over here. And that's an easy way to do copy paste where you're not going back and forth between the documents. I didn't even think about that. But this will be a lot more smooth as the next version of Poly comes out. Poly Alpha V2 will be having a lot of this essentially done for you. So you will have a blueprint file. That blueprint file will be where you do all of your talking. And then what you would do, so this would actually be, I would do an ideas file. I would do all of my prompting and brainstorming in this ideas file. And then once I had everything in this ideas file, like the dossier that we had at the beginning, I would then create a new blueprint. I would only turn on the ideas file. I'd come into the blueprint, and then there will be a prompt to take all of your chatting and everything you've decided on in ideas 1, and it'll turn it into a markdown file of different sections. So it'll have your pitch, it'll have your hook, it will have your genre and tropes that you're covering, it will have your character sheets, it'll have your locations, it will have your outline, it will have your act notes, all of that stuff will then be essentially reformatted into a markdown. And then you'll be able to parse this. And what parsing means is you're going to click a button, and that button is then going to go through the blueprint and it is going to extract different pieces of it. It's going to extract every single character sheet, and it's going to create a different character file for each of those characters. It's going to extract the locations and settings, do the same thing with the location and settings and file type. It's going to pull the style and tone guide. It's going to pull your outline out. It's going to pull, if you have world building, it's going to pull that out. And so then you don't have to copy and paste this into multiple files. It's going to do it all for you. And then the outline will have a corkboard view. So the outline will also be parsed into individual chapters with subcards for each scene under that chapter. And then you'll be able to move them around on the corkboard. And once you have, and you can edit those cards as well. And then once you have that finalized, you will hit finalize outline, and it will send the chapter and scene breakdowns to the chapter. So there'll be a little deck, is what I'm going to call it, up here right below the title. There'll be a little deck that's collapsible. And in that deck, it will have your chapter summary, and each of your scenes in that deck. Why I'm doing it with the deck is so that when you export, go to export. When you export manuscript to docx, it exports all chapter files in the manuscript folder. And so this will prevent all of this from being in the actual chapter. So you'll only have prose exporting when you do the export. You won't have to worry about your outline summaries and all of that accidentally being in that export. So it'll just make that smoother. And then you'll be able to use that chapter context in your writing prompt. So in the writing prompt, instead of having the active docs and words before, instead of doing that, you would have, instead of active documents, it would be chapter outline. And then words before, if you had something else, or active documents, really, it would probably be no words before, it would be chapter outline, and then active documents for context, where you'd have your style guide on and anything else that is relevant. Usually these chapter and scene breakdowns are good enough, usually for like the characters and stuff. I would have characters on usually for the first couple of chapters, as we have like the first introductions to those characters so that AI knows who they are. But past that, I usually wouldn't have all of my characters turned on. So that's a little sneak peek of what's coming, where this process will be a lot more streamlined, where it's going to get you to drafting a lot faster. All right, hopefully that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.